My thermostat, my doorbell, my alarm system, a few cameras, a whole slew of switches, they're all about a half a decade old and I want to upgrade. But just because I want to upgrade doesn't mean I should upgrade. Today, we're talking about when is the right time to upgrade your smart home devices. I'm Patrick Hunt, and I want you to like smart home tech as much as I do. Real solutions with Matter, Apple Home, and a little creativity. Weekly, I'll show you how small upgrades can make a big difference. Welcome. So before we get into when or why we should upgrade, let's talk about why we often don't upgrade. And the first major factor is, of course, cost. A lot of these devices are pretty expensive, especially the big anchor devices like your thermostat or your doorbell or your security system or robot vacuums. Those can be pretty expensive. And if you're upgrading every single year, you're gonna go broke. But also the little devices like the sensors that you might place around the house. You might need a lot of those to do the automations that you wanna do. And if they're $30 a piece, those can really add up as well. And then the second big factor is difficulty of installation. Some of these involve some electrical work, like installing switches, some of the light fixtures, or maybe they require some plumbing work, like if you want to install a smart valve shutoff. You might have to hire a professional in order to do some of this work. So you don't want to be switching things out too often and hiring a professional every single time. Or you did it yourself and spent a pretty significant amount of time having to do it. And then there's the time to set up. And this is beyond installation. This is the time that it takes to do any configuration of the device, getting it into your ecosystem of choice, getting any automations going, because some of these devices can be useless if you don't have the right automations or the right configuration. So you have to factor in that time as well when it comes to replacing a device and setting up a new device in its place. And then the last major factor I would say is household acceptance. Maybe your family just got used to using the old device that was there and they got to start figuring out how to use this new one. This is one of the big pain points for spousal approval. If you're switching devices in and out and your spouse, who may not be as interested as you are, could get pretty frustrated with having to learn a new device all the time when they didn't want to learn one in the first place. So now that we've talked about why we don't often upgrade, let's talk about why we do. And the first big thing that's a given is it's a shiny new object and I want it. Trust me, that is the way that I am, and it might be the way that you are too, but it's not a good enough reason. And we need to move past that one very quickly. And then there's two other obvious reasons that you might want to be upgrading. One, the device is being phased out. The manufacturer has stated that, and you have some time to figure out what your next move is while it's being phased out. You don't really want to continue using a device that's no longer being supported by the manufacturer, no longer getting updates and things of that nature. And then the other reason is if it's not functioning anymore, if it's actually broken, that's a very good reason to upgrade and replace that device. So with those obvious reasons out of the way, let's move on to the arguments. Basically, the reason that you're going to share this video with your spouse so you can get that shiny new thing. The first good reason to upgrade is that the device that you currently have isn't performing as expected. Sometimes you really don't know what a product is going to be like until you get it installed. You can do all the research, you can watch the videos, but once you get it in, maybe it doesn't have all the features that you expected it to have. Maybe its performance is a little bit inconsistent and it's not necessarily something that's wrong with the device, it's just the nature of the device. Things like that, even with the most vetting, can appear once it's actually been installed and you've been using it for a little while, and you just realize that it isn't for you. Or maybe you've learned a little bit more about smart home technology in general since you installed this device. It's a Wi-Fi device, and you learned that something like a Zigbee or a Thread network might be more efficient in your house. It's that sort of thing that can make a good argument for replacing this device. The next good reason to think about upgrading your device is that you've decided to go from one ecosystem to another, and this device in particular is not compatible. Now, before you go and start ripping your devices out of the walls, I highly encourage you to see what other routes there are out there, like going through Homebridge or Home Assistant, and using that as a bridge to the new ecosystem. This is a very common route a lot of people take in order to make those devices compatible with their ecosystem of choice. It's relied upon by a lot of people, and it's something that you should look into before you decide to throw that old device in the trash. But if you've been on your current platform for years, you've decided that you really don't like it, and switching to a new platform would be more efficient, it would make for a more rock solid setup, and maybe it would eliminate duplicative subscriptions, things of that nature, then I think you've earned it. And and it's completely fine to explore new options. That's another point towards upgrading the device. And the last thing to really consider is if the technology has radically changed since you installed your device. And I'm not talking about incremental changes that you might find in an Apple product every single year, like an iPhone or a watch or something like that. I mean that the new devices contain technology that blow yours out of the water. Consider millimeter wave technology and motion sensors, power over Ethernet, things that can really change how well the device does what it was intended to do, how well it works, how solid it is. But the most important thing of all this is that you're well researched. You're paying attention to what's coming out and when. You don't want to buy a new device when there's a new one coming out in a couple of months, unless you've decided that you're okay with not having the new features that it has. But if it's me and it's been years since I've upgraded, I want to get the new one so it's relevant for a longer period of time. I don't want to buy the device that's going to be obsolete in a year or two. And so finally, if you're honest with yourself and the device really is a constant frustration, or it's only compatible with Google or Alexa and you're done with those platforms and it's making the hobby no fun anymore, and the new tech coming out is night and day compared to what you're currently using, then yeah, go ahead and hit the checkout button, buy the thing. Matter of fact, put it in the comments so I can buy it too. Because I wanna know about what you've been researching, I wanna know why you're buying it, I wanna know why it's the next thing to get. Like I said at the beginning, I have a few things I wanna upgrade myself and I'm looking to drain my bank account. So drop in the comments what you're buying. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and I'll see you next week. Thanks.